Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSat Network. Friend, as you know, we are going to discuss psychology. Starting from today, we will discuss a number of topics like attitude, aptitude, motivation, and leadership. But in today's lectures, we will try to understand what is the concept and what are the other theories and what are the construct of the attitude, and also how attitude is related to behavior. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in studio Dr. Soma Sengupta. She is Associate Professor in Kamala Nehru College, Delhi University, and has written a number of papers in national and international journals and long experience, about 14 years of teaching, and also written a book on consumer behavior. So I hope her knowledge and experience will help us to understand this topic, attitude and aptitude, in a new perspective. So on your behalf, I welcome Dr. Soma Sengupta for EduSat lecture. Welcome, ma'am.
Today we are going to discuss on this topic, attitude and aptitude. And the areas we are going to cover is attitude, concept and definition, characteristic of attitude, attitude and behavior, attitude formation, measurement and change, aptitude, concept and definition, aptitude tests. Now this is the topic, attitude and aptitude. Although it's related to the area of psychology, but it is extensively used, the theories are used in the field of organization behavior and HRM, that is human resource management. We'll start with the concept of attitude and we'll define the term. Now, people's attitudes and values have a significant impact on their behavior, both within the organizational context and other social context. They influence the perception of objects and people, exposure to and comprehension of information, choice of friends, co-workers, etc. Therefore, for managing the people effectively in the organization, management must understand their attitudes and values. An attitude is a hypothetical construct that represents an individual's degree of like or dislike for something. Attitudes are generally positive or negative views of a person, place, thing or event. Now how it may be positive or negative view of a person in the sense that you may like a person or you might not like a person. For example, you might like your boss or subordinate or the colleague, or you may have a negative attitude towards them. Likewise, you may have positive or negative attitude towards any social figure, maybe some politician or actor. Likewise for a place also. Now why we are concerned with attitude towards place, in the sense that whether you have a positive attitude towards the organization. Likewise, whether you have a positive attitude towards certain things like clothing, the way you dress up, that also can be found out through your analysis of your attitude. Likewise, attitude towards certain events. Do you have a positive attitude towards, say, certain events like no smoking campaign or any other social event, or you have a negative attitude towards it? This is often referred to as attitude object. People can also be conflicted or ambivalent towards an object, meaning that they simultaneously possess both positive and negative attitude toward the item in question. So at the same time, you may have positive as well as negative attitude towards a particular thing. That means you are not clear about your attitude, or it may differ from time to time. Sometimes you have a positive attitude towards a thing and then it may shift to a negative attitude, or vice versa, depending upon the situation, depending upon the circumstances. Now the concept and definition, there are different definitions of attitude, but the researchers on attitude tend to define the term on two major aspects. One is set and readiness and another is effect and evaluation. In terms of set and readiness, as a social phenomenon, attitude is conceived as a tendency, set, or readiness to respond to some social object. According to Gordon W. Allport, attitude is a mental and neural state of readiness organized through experience, exerting a directive or dynamic influence upon the individual's response to all objects and situations with which it is related. It means that you are ready to respond to a particular object. You have learned that behavior over a period of time, and as and when the situation arises, your response depend upon your previous knowledge or previous behavior. Then effect and evaluation, here attitudes are considered as beliefs imbued with emotional and motivational properties and are expressed in a person's favorability towards an object. According to Kretsch and Crutchfield, attitude is an enduring organization of motivational, emotional, perceptual, and cognitive processes with respect to some aspect of the individual's world. So, in this sense, you are evaluating evaluation consists of attributing goodness, badness, or desirable, undesirable qualities to an object. This again depends upon your learned behavior and values. Cards and Scotland defines attitude as a tendency to predisposition to evaluate object or symbol of the object in a certain way. Now the characteristics of attitude. Attitude affects behavior of an individual by putting him ready to respond favorably or unfavorably to things in the environment. Now, this is again a learned behavior, and once you form an attitude towards a particular thing, you act favorably or unfavorably towards that object. It is acquired through learning over a period of time. It means that since your childhood, in fact, since your birth till the time of your death, you are acquiring one or the other kinds of attitude. It is invisible as they constitute a psychological phenomenon. They can be observed by observing the behavior of an individual. It is pervasive in the sense that every individual has some kind of attitude towards the objects in his environment. So attitude is not the prerogative of the smartest people or people belonging to upper strata of society. Every individual has a right, or has it is there embedded in his behavior to react to a particular object. Attitudes are basic to opinion and beliefs. Now these terms, attitude, opinion, and beliefs, are used interchangeably. Opinions are expression of attitudes while belief is the cognitive component of attitude, which reflects the manner in which object is perceived. In many books, these three terms are used interchangeably as well. Now, attitude and behavior. Attitude definitely has an impact on the behavior of a person, as we have discussed earlier. Attitude alone do not influence behavior, but these act with other factors in the individual influencing behavior, such as personality, perception, motivation, etc. Further, attitudes are also affected by individual dimensions as well as the objects, persons, and ideas. Now, see this diagram carefully. The attitude towards object, person, or idea is affecting the behavior towards object, person, or idea, and it is also affected by that. Likewise, other influence on behavior towards object, person, or idea also has an impact on the behavior towards object, person, or idea. So attitude alone doesn't have an impact on the behavior. Attitude along with other influences have an influence on the behavior. Now the functions attitude play in influencing behavior. One is instrumental or utilitarian. Attitudes serve as a means to reach a desired goal or to avoid an undesired one. Instrumental attitudes are aroused by the activation of a need or cues that are associated with the object and arouse favorable and unfavorable feelings. Ego defensive. They are aroused by the internal or external threat, frustrating events, appeals, or to the build-up or repressed impulses and suggestions by authoritarian sources. Value orientation. Attitude expresses a person's value or enhance his self-identity. Now these values are learned over a period of time, as we have said that from childhood to the death a person is acquiring values, and in a way he is acquiring the attitudes as well. These arise by conditions that threaten the self-concept, appeals to reassert the person's self-image. Knowledge. Attitudes provide a standard against which a person evaluates aspects of his world. So he has a mental construct, and that is the attitude, and against which he analyzes other elements in the environment and judges those elements. Now there are certain theories of attitude formation. The first category of theories are cognitive consistency theories. Now these are actually concerned with inconsistencies that arise between related beliefs, knowledge and evaluations about an object. The psychological tension created by this unpleasant state leads to attempts at reducing the inconsistency. That means at a particular period of time a person has certain beliefs and knowledge and evaluations, but it may contradict with what he is getting from the environment, leading to inconsistencies, and the person will try to reduce these inconsistencies. And in this manner, one of the theory is balance theory, which is given by F. Heider. A person's attitude towards an object depends on his attitudes towards a source who is linked to the object. Thus, if a perceiver likes a source who favors a certain position on an issue, the balancing process induces the perceiver to favor that position too. So again, you are trying to reduce the inconsistency. Then the next theory is congruity theory, which is given by Osgood and Tannenbaum. The focus is on changes in the evaluation of a source and a concept. Congruity, which means stable state, exists when a source and concept that are positively associated have exactly the same evaluations. But in the reverse case, it may result in incongruity or unstable state. Now this incongruity will lead to attitude change. It means that if the incongruity is stronger, it will lead to attitude change. Then comes the affective cognitive consistency theory given by M.J. Rosenberg. This theory is concerned with the consistency between a person's overall attitude or effect towards an object or issue and his beliefs about its relationship to his more general values. Changes in the affective component produces changes in the cognitive component to bring consistency. Again, the idea is to bring consistency from the state of inconsistency. Now, the last one in this series is cognitive dissonance theory, which is given by L. Festinger. Now, cognitions are dissonant whenever they are incompatible or if they are opposed to one's experience about the relationship of events. After a decision to overcome dissonance, the justification process starts. Dissonance reducing behavior have the net effect of increasing the valuation of chosen alternative and decreasing the valuation of rejected alternatives. For example, when a person, suppose he wants to buy a laptop, there are several brands available in the market. Each brand claims certain features which are there in their laptop. Now he makes a decision. Suppose he buys an HP laptop. Now after buying the laptop, if he gets negative information about HP, his dissonance will increase. And if he gets positive information about other brands, then again his dissonance will increase. So he will try to reduce this dissonance. How he will do that? He will look for information which supports his decision to buy HP. That means he would look for all the positive information relating to the product and also avoid all the negative information about the product. Likewise, he will try to find out all the negative information about other products available in the market, and avoid all the positive information about the other products. In this way, he will justify his purchase, and this way he will reduce the dissonance. So this is known as dissonance reducing behavior in marketing. Likewise, it can be applied in OB as well as in HRM. Now, the next category of theory is functional theory. One of the theory is given by Katz and another is Kalman, but the basic idea is the same, that this theory states that an understanding of the functions served by attitude. We have already discussed the functions: utilitarian, ego defensive, value orientation and knowledge, is important for attitude change in the individual. So, depending upon the function, the attitude change will take place. The last theory is social judgment theory, which is given by Sheriff and Hovland. This theory states that a person's own stand on an issue, that is initial attitude, serves as an anchor for the judgment of attitudinally related stimuli. The person's initial attitude on an issue provides a point of reference against which he evaluates other opinions. Now, the factors in attitude formation. The attitudes are learned. Individuals learn things from the environment in which they interact. So, environment has an impact on the attitude formation of a person. The factors may be classified into group factors and personality factors. Let's talk about the group factors first. Now, the first group with which the individual meets as and when he takes birth is the family. All the members of the family, especially the mother, the father and the siblings, have an impact on his attitude formation. He learns this attitude, values and norms, beliefs, everything from the family. The family can be the nuclear family. They have the immediate impact in attitude formation, or the extended family when he meets or when he interacts with his cousins, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and this is known as the socialization process. In this socialization process, he will acquire new attitude from these people through his interaction and also influence their attitude as well. That means other members of the family will also acquire certain attitude from this person. Now, the child imitates the elders. They pick up certain mannerism from the elders with whom they interact. Likewise, they acquire the attitudes as well from these people. It depends upon on his personal choice also. If he likes a particular member of the family more, his attitude will be formed. It will be influenced more by that person. So that is the family. The second group factor is the reference group. Now, reference group may be primary or the secondary group, with whom or from whom an individual learns value system, norms and required behavior pattern. Now, for an individual, the reference group may be his family or the place of work, his educational institution or a club where he is regularly going, or if he is a member of a particular community, that community will be considered as a reference group, and they definitely have influence in his in that person's attitude formation and value system. Likewise, the third group factor is social class, the social class to which the individual belongs. It transmits cultural behavior pattern and cultural expectation. Now, a person belonging to upper social class will have a different attitude and behavior if we compare it with a person belonging to lowers or lower middles or middles. So this will influence his likings, dislikings, his way of talking, his attitude towards different aspect of life, way he dresses up, his opinions, everything will be influenced by the social class to which that person belongs. Then there are certain personality factors also. Now, these personality factors, it may be inborn personality factor or he has acquired it through his experience, but that may be unique to this person. If a person have an authoritarian personality. Then he will have ethnocentric attitude. That means he will consider his own views superior in comparison to other views. So he will be reluctant to take suggestions. He will hold conventional values. In comparison to that, there may be liberal personality of a person. If a person is belonging to such category, he will accept socially unacceptable impulses as well. He will be empathetic towards others. He will accept changes willfully. Now, how will you measure attitude? Generally, self-report questionnaires are used to measure attitudes, and these questionnaires are based on certain scales. Now, three very prominent scales which we are going to discuss today are: first is Thurston type of scale. Now, a large number of statements relating to any object about which attitudes are to be measured are placed in 11 piles, with most favorable statement being placed in pile 1 and most unfavorable one being placed in pile 11. Other statements are placed in between these positions. Now, each respondent checks the statement with which he agrees. His attitude score is then based on the average or median scale of the statements. Now, the most popular attitude measurement scale is the Likert scale, and it is quite easy to understand also. This scale uses 5 points showing degree of agreement or disagreement with the given statement, like strongly agree, indifferent, or then disagree and strongly disagree. Respondents are asked to check one of the 5 points given on every statement. The scores are then calculated and his attitude can be measured. Then semantic differential is another scale. It consists of several pairs of opposite adjectives or phrases with scale values in between. The respondents mark the position along each scale that reflects his attitude to the object. Scale values 1 to 7 are associated with the different responses, and the score is the sum of these sum of these points. Now, there can be indirect tests also which can be used to measure the attitude: projective techniques and disguised approaches. Under projective techniques, what they do, they show a picture or a film, and the respondent will fill up a questionnaire or write an essay on the scene. The psychologist will then study this his writing and then find out how he has perceived that situation or that film or that strip of picture. So this is known as projective technique, which is used extensively in selection of candidates also. Then psychological reaction techniques can also be used to measure attitude. Psychological reaction techniques, the situations are given to a person and his reactions are then monitored, and that in that way you can analyze or understand the attitude of a person and find out his suitability for a particular job or particular position. Now, attitudes relevant for organizational behavior, we are going to discuss that. People develop attitudes towards other persons, objects and ideas. Thus, there may be numerous attitudes in a person, but for an organization, the attitudes held by its members about its practices are important and relevant, like the employees' attitudes towards job satisfaction, job involvement, organizational commitments and other. So, the organization is seldom interested in analyzing attitude of a person on every aspect. It is more concerned about or more concerned on how the organizational cues or practices affect the attitude of a person and hence the behavior of that person in the organization. First factor which they are interested in is job satisfaction. That is the extent to which the employee finds gratification or fulfillment in their work. It is affected by the employee's needs and aspirations, relationship with superior and co-workers, working condition, compensation, etc. Now, these factors have an influence on job satisfaction, that is his relationship with interpersonal relations, working condition, compensation, etc. A person who is satisfied with the job will willfully work for the organization, will have other impact on other factors like job involvement as well. Now he will consider job as interesting and will try to improve upon his job because he is finding satisfaction in the job. Then comes job involvement. That is the degree to which employees immerse themselves in their jobs. Like in Japan, we say that there is work culture. They consider their place of work more important than their home, and they are ready to work 20 hours there or spend 20 hours at the place of work. So this means that they are highly involved with the job. They invest time and energy in them and view work as a central part of their overall lives. So this is job involvement. Another is organizational commitment. Now the organizational commitment is also related with job satisfaction and job involvement, and it leads to employee loyalty to the organization. If a person is loyal towards the organization, again, you need not push the person to work hard. Automatically he will work hard for the organization. He will be loyal to the organization and will not leave the job. So it will reduce employee turnover. Likewise, it will reduce absenteeism. So it is the degree to which an employee identifies with the organization and wants to continue actively and meaningfully participating in it. Now there are other factors in the organization also for which the member of the organization may have an attitude or will have an impact on his attitude, like the salary, promotion possibilities, employee benefits, and also the relationship with the superior as well as the subordinates. Now we will study the effects of employee attitude. Now basically performance is the most important thing. That means employee performance. If a person has a positive attitude towards the organization and the work, it will lead to job satisfaction, job involvement, commitment, and automatically it will improve his performance as well. So a positive attitude among the workers is beneficial for the organization. You need lesser supervision, there will be perfect control, you need not have external controls on the employees, there will be self-control. Their behavior will be self-controlled. Now the opposite is also true. If a person has a negative attitude towards the organization, his performance will dip. He will not like to work in the organization, look for other jobs. And if your employees, most of the employees have such type of negative attitude, then labor turnover and absenteeism will be higher. Then the next is employee turnover. Employee turnover is again, as we have discussed earlier also, this is related to attitude of the employees. Turnover is the change in the workforce during a particular period of time. That is, number of people may be joining the organization and certain number of people may be going out of the organization. Now if this rate is higher, it means the change in the workforce is at a higher rate, and this will lead to instability among the employees. And if instability is there, you cannot ensure a constant performance or high performance from the employee. So attitude of the employee will determine whether he will stick to the organization or will leave the organization. So it definitely has an impact on employee turnover. Then absence and tardiness. Absence, willfully absenting himself from the place of work when the work is waiting for that person or he is supposed to report for the work. Tardiness is for you are taking unnecessary breaks in between the job. Now absence and tardiness is also related to the attitude of the person towards the work and organization. Positive attitude, lesser number of cases of absenteeism and tardiness, and willfully the person will stick to the job and will try to perform well in the organization. Negative attitude, he will dislike the job and will try to absent himself from the job if possible. Violence. Positive attitude, if it is there, then the person will be polite towards the other person, he will respect other person, but in at the workplace. But if a negative attitude is there for the workplace and the subordinates, superiors as well as the peers, then it will lead to aggressive behavior. You can find aggressive behavior among such employees, so, which leads to violence. Most of the strikes, lockouts, gheraos and all these unrest is because of a negative attitude among the employees towards the organization. Now, during the earlier phase of industrialization, as well as if we see the Indian history, we will find that if we observe the industrial relations during the 70s, unrest was more, and because the attitude of the employees towards the workplace organization was more negative in comparison to what we find today among the employees, because they are better paid, better educated, and they know their rights, and lesser number of strikes are happening. So positive attitude reduces violence. Other effects also that can be, if a positive attitude is there, then it will lead to organizational citizenship and better behavior in the organization. Then next heading is methods of attitude change. Now every person has a particular kind of attitude towards a person, thing, object or an event. We have discussed this earlier also. Now the organization wants that the attitude of the person should match with their expectation. So they would like to change the attitude of the person which is not matching with the organizational expectation. So how they can do that? Now organizations adopt a number of techniques for changing attitudes of their members so that their behavior corresponds to the organizational requirements. The methods of attitude change are communication of additional information, approval and disapproval of a particular attitude. It means again you can have a carrot and stick approach, in the sense that if a person's attitude is matching with the organizational expectation, then you will approve that attitude or promote that attitude. You will praise that person for such an attitude. And if it doesn't matches with the organization's expectation, then you will disapprove it, and you will ridicule that attitude in a polite manner. Then group influence. Through group influence also you can change the attitude, because every person is a member of certain group and he goes by the group's norms and beliefs. Now if the group has an influence on that person, and if you can use the group or manage the group properly, you can change the attitude of the members of the group. So for that you have to find out the opinion leader among the group who has a significant impact on the attitudes of the people. Then inducing engagement in discrepant behavior, manipulating reward system. Now we have discussed carrot and stick type of an approach. You can manipulate the reward system, and you can give positive reward or reward for displaying positive attitude, and negative one or negative measures to so that the person shuns the negative attitude. Clearly defining employee's role. If you in the beginning clearly define the role of the employee that he has to play in the organization, he will be very clear about the expectation of the organization from him. So it will lead to formation of an attitude towards the organization which organization desires. Setting challenging targets. Now setting challenging targets will also motivate that person to perform better, and also he will find the job interesting. Now again it depends upon the attitude of the person, but you want to make him more competitive and you want the employee to like those challenging tasks. So again you have to give them adequate rewards if he takes up those challenging targets. Providing immediate feedback. Now generally what happens, the feedback is provided at the end of a particular period. but then there is a time gap. So immediate feedback will lead to an understanding among the employees that whatever attitude they are displaying right now is positive or negative. So accordingly they can change their attitude or stick to their positive attitude. Employees' participation in decision making will also improve their attitude towards the organization and the workplace. Nowadays, this is becoming a necessity in the sense that workers are more aware about their rights, and if you want to introduce any change in the organization, that will be acceptable to the employees only if they are also part of the decision making process. Therefore, even the industrial laws, they talk about employees' participation in decision making. The Industrial Dispute Acts also gives such type of suggestion that employees should be allowed to participate in decision making process. Exhibiting a caring attitude towards employees will also lead to a positive attitude among the employees for the organization. Now they will consider the organization as their second home or family, or their bosses as their guide also. So if they show a kind of a benevolent behavior towards the employees, that will also bring positive attitudinal change among the employees. And the last one is that understanding employees' attitude. Now whatever attitude they presently have, you have to understand it first, then only you can introduce changes in their attitude. Now beside these steps which can be taken up by the organization to change the attitude of a person, an individual can also try to improve their attitude. So developing positive attitudes by individual is the next topic. Employees as individuals may develop positive attitudes on their own within the organization as well as outside it. The motive behind it is maybe to betterment of the life of the employee. Now following actions are relevant in this regard. One is identification of attitude. Understand what attitude you have and analyze it. An analysis will show whether you are generally having a negative attitude towards the environment around you, or you have a positive attitude towards the environment around you. Now if you have a positive attitude, it will significantly improve your performance. So analyze your present attitude or identification of attitudes is the first step which an individual can take. Looking for positives. Looking for positives will always help you in the sense that it will improve your judgment about people, and you will get a positive influence from these factors. Then building positive self-esteem is also important. Setting a challenging target for yourself will also improve your attitude. Avoiding procrastination, that means delaying techniques. You put the job for till the time a crisis arises. That type of attitude will go away. So you should avoid that type of that means avoiding the job, or till the last time or last minute you are waiting for the time. So that kind of thing should be avoided to improve the attitude. Then continuous learning is another behavior which can improve your attitude, in the sense that continuously look for new information, improve your behavior. So that will improve the your attitude, and it will become more positive. So this is helpful for betterment of your life. Now the next heading is aptitude. We will discuss its concept and definition. Aptitude means the potential which an individual has for learning the skills required to do a job efficiently. It is defined as an acquired or natural ability, usually measurable with aptitude tests, for learning and proficiency in a specific area or discipline. Aptitude is expressed in interest and is reflected in current performance, which is expected to perform or to improve over time with training. A natural or acquired disposition or capacity for a particular purpose or tendency to a particular action or effect, such as an oil has an aptitude to burn. So we have certain natural aptitude and certain acquired aptitude. Now how we can measure the aptitude? we can conduct certain tests. Aptitude tests are conducted by the selection department in an organization. Aptitude, or they are also known as potential ability test, and they measure the latent ability or potential of a candidate to learn a new job or skill. It also measures an applicant's capacity and his potential for development. Now, peculiarities or defects in a person's sensory or intellectual capacity can be detected through these tests, and these tests focus attention on a particular type of talent such as reasoning, learning, mechanical bent of mind, etc. Now, there are three popular types of aptitude tests, and one is mental or intelligence test or cognitive test, second mechanical test, and the third is psychomotor or skill test. First, we will discuss the mental or intelligence test or cognitive test. Now, these tests measures the overall intellectual capacity or cognitive abilities. Now, that is required in any organization where you want to determine whether a supervisory candidate has the intelligence to do a paperwork required, whether a bookkeeper candidate has the required numerical aptitude. Now, one of the questions which is used to measure intelligence is IQ, which is very popular, intelligence quotient. This is the score or quotient of the mental age, that is the age group which scored such a result or on an average of the test taker, and the chronological age of the test taker multiplied by 100. So, mental age divided by the actual or chronological age multiplied by 100 will give you IQ. IQ helps in determining an individual's overall intellectual capacity, capacity to deal with new problem, word fluency, memory, inductive reasoning, comprehension, speed of perception, spatial visualization, ability to understand instructions, ability to make decisions. One of the popular intelligence test is Stanford Binet intelligence scales. Now, Binet is the person who first of all gave us IQ. Now, the standard Binet intelligence test is a standardized test that assesses IQ and cognitive abilities in children and adults aged between 2 to 23 in 4 areas including verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, abstract and visual reasoning, and short-term memory skills. This also scores 15 subsets including vocabulary, comprehension, verbal absurdities, pattern analysis, matrices, paper folding and cutting, copying, quantitative, number series, equation building, memory for sentences, memory for digits, memory for objects, and bead memory. The second type of mental tests are the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children. It is developed by Dr. David Wechsler. It is an individually administered intelligence test for children between the ages of 6 and 16 that can be completed without reading or writing. It generates an IQ score which represents a child's general intellectual ability. The subsets are vocabulary, similarities, comprehension, information, word reasoning, block design, picture concepts, picture completion, letter number sequencing, coding, symbol search, etc. And the third test is Wonderlic Cognitive Ability Test. It is a 12-minute, 50-question test used to assess the aptitude of prospective employees for learning and problem solving in a range of occupations. The test was developed by Eldon F. Wonderlic. It contains questions more appropriate to the 21st century and is available both online and printed form. Now, there are certain limitations of IQ test. First thing is, administration of these tests is cumbersome and expensive, and these tests are criticized on the ground of discrimination against weaker sections of society. After the aptitude, first type of aptitude test, that is the mental ability test, the second one is mechanical aptitude test. Now, the aim of such test is to measure the applicant's aptitude for the job in question. The test the applicant's understanding of basic mechanical principles. Now, it measures the capacity to learn a particular type of mechanical work, capacity for spatial visualization, perceptual speed, manual dexterity, visual insights, specialized knowledge of techniques, problem solving ability, technical vocabulary. Now, where it is useful? It is useful for selecting apprentices, mechanics, maintenance workers and mechanical technicians. That is, it is generally used for selecting lower level personnel who are entrusted with the job of operating machines. So, this has a very particular application, in the sense only the mechanical type of jobs are tested, the aptitude for those are tested through this kind of test. Then the last one in this series is the psychomotor or skill test. Now, these tests help in measuring many motor or physical abilities like finger dexterity, strength, manual dexterity, reaction time, muscular movement, control and coordination, speed and accuracy of simple judgment, as well as the speed of finger, hand and arm movement. Now, where it can be used, again, where mechanical type of jobs, like workers who have to perform semi-skilled and repetitive jobs like assembly work, packing, testing and inspection, machine operators, police candidates, their skills are tested with the help of this kind of test. One of the popular psychomotor test is Stromberg Dexterity Test, SDT. It requires the candidate to follow a special pattern of arm and hand movement. The candidate must pick up a block, not its color, move it to the form board and place it in the specified hole. Now, attitude and aptitude, a final word. It is a very popular statement that your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. Aptitude, as we have discussed, it is a natural tendency or talent, ability, while attitude is a way of thinking, acting or feeling. Hence, aptitude is the talent and attitude is the temperament. Attitude goes to the individual's bent towards a skill set. Attitude is more general and will have a strong impact on the individual's willingness to improve a weakness in a skill set. But both are important. To conclude, they are both directly tied to competence. Aptitude is a measurement of competence, while attitude will determine how willing an individual is to improve competence. So that's it for today. Any questions?
Can you elaborate the last one which you said, the aptitude is a measurement of competence, with while attitude will determine how willing an individual is to improve the competence?
Yeah, sure. Now, aptitude is related to skill, and attitude is related more to the talent. Okay, or the the aptitude is related more to talent and attitude is related to temperament. Now, if a person is skillful enough, if he is skillful enough, the chances of success improves, no doubt about that. But if he has a negative attitude towards the work, he doesn't want to work willingly, then he can't succeed. For that, he needs a positive attitude. If he is happy doing the job, then he will be more successful. So that's why it is said that it is your attitude, not your aptitude, which will determine your altitude. You will be more successful if you have a positive attitude towards a particular thing or person or job.
Right.
But on top, if you have aptitude as well, the chances of success will definitely improve.
We also have question from our viewers. We will take up the questions. So, as you said that the most important is to attitude, because attitude, if person person is willing to learn something.
Actually,
so
if you have positive attitude, you will improve your aptitude as well.
Yes,
you will try to improve your aptitude.
Right, one can gain the skill required for particular job.
Willfully, you will gain that.
Yeah.
Try to gain that.
So now it is seen that the competitive examination test the aptitude test. So how do you see this attitude test or intelligence?
Actually, nowadays in these competitive exams.
Okay, we will discuss. But before that, we take up question.
Okay. Is there any question?
Yeah.
Actually, normally we go through audio video interaction, मगर इसमें कुछ problem है और.
Okay, by the time it comes to the discussion.
So we were discussing that nowadays in organizations they are not only interested in knowing your aptitude but also interested in knowing your attitude also.
Okay.
So therefore they have different attitude tests or questionnaires or scales have been derived so
Okay.
that you can mark them and you can find out the attitude of the respondent. Now suppose a person is an IIT alumnus or he has done MBA from a very good institution. But if his attitude towards the work is not positive, he will not be of value to the organization. We nowadays we see in the newspaper that such and such person who has passed out an exam from say IIT or IIM is drawing the salary, this much of salary. Okay, now we never find out whether he continued in that job or not, isn't
Right,
it?
right.
Suppose he is getting a package of this much lakhs or crores, but do we find it out whether he continued with that job for long or not? Because it will depend also upon the success will depend upon his attitude also.
Attitude, and whether he have been
Performing well or not.
performing well, or the expectation which the
Meeting the expectation of the organization or not.
Yeah.
So that's why they are now interested in attitude as well as they are not only interested in IQ but they are also interested in EQ, the emotional
emotional
quotient.
quotient. Right.
How much you consider the job important. So
Right.
that is also important.
Yes, EQ has recently been come into
Picture?
yeah,
Yeah.
come into the picture. Before that, it was IQ that determined the altitude. So with the coming of EQ, as you said, that attitude.
So you have to do a kind of a psychological analysis of the person to find out whether he is emotionally attached to the job or not. Then only we can find his EQ and his chances of success.
Because sometimes it has come to the notice that there are conflict between attitude towards the job, what he is doing, and but attitude toward the organizations. So the person liked the job, but
We have
he
discussed, like the job but not the organization.
yeah, but not the organizations.
Now,
Yeah, like the organization, but not the job.
this can happen, but if he likes the job, slowly or steadily he will like the organization as well.
He will start
Or
liking.
if the organization is not finding satisfaction, see the the term job satisfaction,
Right.
it covers many areas. It is whether he is liking the job itself, he is satisfied with the salary, with interpersonal relations with the superior, subordinate, and his colleague. So, job satisfaction is a kind of an amalgam of various factors. Now, if all these factors are positive, then only he will stick to the organization. Otherwise, he may leave the organization. So, that is about
Job satisfaction.
job satisfaction.
So
It's not only about that if I'm liking my job, I will stick to the organization. If other factors you don't like, then you may leave the
okay, when we
organization.
compare two age group, one is the above 50, yeah, those who were early in 60, 70, they were more concerned about the, well, let us take the question first. 60, 70, they were more concerned about the, well, let us take the question first. Yeah, welcome, please ask your question. Call from, you have call from Srinagar.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please ask your question.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
How can we develop a positive attitude towards an uninterested job?
Can
Where
you
we are not
repeat?
interested. Sometimes we get such jobs that are not of our own choice. So, how we develop a positive attitude? That are not of our own choice. So,
Is it audible?
Will you please repeat the question?
Now the question what I guess is is similar to what you have asked. That is, if you take up a job and you like the job but not the organization. So we have already answered that it will depend upon job satisfaction.
Okay.
And job satisfaction is a combination of different factors, right from the job itself to the interpersonal relationship and working condition in the organization. And if you are satisfied in all these aspects, then only you have higher job satisfaction. And if a person, if he has a negative attitude, his job satisfaction job involvement as well as commitment towards the organization will lessen. Now, we have discussed two things in the sense that the organization can take up steps to improve the attitude of the employees, and the individual himself can also take up certain steps to improve the attitude. We have discussed these two areas. The organization can go for, as we have discussed, that if positive attitude is displayed by the employee, he can be rewarded for that, and his morale can be boosted. You can help him in participation. Employees' participation in decision making is important. So all this will improve the attitude of a person.
That is true, but how will you explain the fact that people now are more thinking of job satisfaction than job security? The change in this attitude, how will you explain?
Yeah, because nowadays the options are more. What we can say is options are
Options are available with the market.
And so if a person is not totally satisfied with the job, they may change or shift to other jobs. Now, security issue, the importance of security issue is all the more it has lessened because people are moving from government job. Nowadays you will find lesser number of people in government job and more in private sector. And in private sector, not only the option is more, but also their behavior is not only affected by the job satisfaction, the factor job satisfaction, but also how much emolument they are getting from the other organization.
Okay.
So wherever they will find that they are getting better opportunity, they will shift. So therefore, job security is of lesser concern than job satisfaction, better emolument, better prospect. These are more important nowadays.
Okay, let us take another question. So the market has evolved. Yeah. Please ask your question.
Market has evolved. Yeah. Please ask your question.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes. Hello?
Yes.
In modern times, we see that in every competitive exam, we have hello?
Yes, we are listening.
We have got the aptitude tests every now and then. Do you think that we should change the trend and opt for attitude tests instead of the aptitude tests?
Now, it
Yeah,
depends.
good question.
Good question. It depends entirely upon the type of the job you are talking about. Now, what I suggest is both aptitude as well as attitude tests are important, and in many organizations, along with aptitude tests, they are taking up attitude test also. And you can find different type of questionnaires which are available on the internet also about the different companies which are going for attitude test. So both the things are important. If it is a job whereby say high IQ is required, so you definitely should have an aptitude test. Or where your psychomotor skills are very important, so you should have an aptitude test. But along with that, if an attitude test is also taken up, then you can judge the attitude of the candidate, whether he will stick to the organization or not, whether he will find the job interesting or not. And this will help in long run in the sense that it will reduce employee turnover and absenteeism, as well as it will improve the performance. You will have higher performance from such type of employees who have scored high not only in aptitude but also in attitude.
Okay. I think we have another question. Yeah, we have one more question from Srinagar.
We have another question. Yeah.
Please ask your question.
Hello? Sir, please take the question, sir.
Could you please reduce the volume of your?
Hello, sir. Sir, you see these days that it is talked of highly that we should have different kind of attitude for selecting the different candidates in the examinations like IAS. It is talked that we should adopt for the aptitude tests. But if I noticed in your lecture that you told that it is the attitude, not the aptitude, which talks about your attitude. So may I know please that what kind of trend should be adopted? should we focus highly on the attitude of a person or on the aptitude? If we have to focus highly on the attitude, then why more weightage is given to the aptitude? On the attitude, then why more weightage is given to the aptitude?
Okay, now although we started with this statement that your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude, but I concluded with the statement that they are both directly tied to competence. Now, it means that attitude alone cannot survive for long. Likewise, aptitude alone cannot take you to a higher altitude. As we have discussed, and I have repeated it time and again, that both the things are important, in the sense that aptitude is a must. If you don't know the job, your attitude cannot take you to a higher performance. So first of all, you should understand that a person should have the aptitude to do the job. But a word of caution: if you have high aptitude, but your attitude towards work is negative, then also you cannot survive for long. You will feel dissatisfied doing the job. So again, attitude is also important. So as I have said and repeating time and again, that both the things are important. But a person, if two persons are there with same aptitude, but the one with higher attitude will obviously he will be more successful than the person who has a negative attitude, if all the things remain the same. So that is the final note, that both are important, but a positive attitude will enhance your performance. So that is the thing.
Okay. Yeah, it's depends when you have to write
See,
aptitude and write
right.
attitude.
If you don't have an aptitude, suppose I'm talking about teaching.
Right.
If you can't teach, then even if you have a high attitude, if you don't know the subject,
Right.
then you cannot teach.
Right.
Okay, even if you are very smart, very positive, but
So
you
let
can't
us
talk
take another
about it.
question.
Okay, even if you are very smart, very positive, but you can't talk.
Yeah, please ask your question.
Sir, please take the next question, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please ask your question.
My question is, how aptitude differ from ability and achievement?
Can you repeat the question, please? Hello?
Hello.
Yes?
Can you repeat the question, please?
How aptitude is differ from ability and achievement?
Aptitude is different from ability and education.
Yes.
Okay. Now,
It's aptitude is different from
ability
and education.
and education. Now, see, ability is measured through aptitude. Ability, your skill, your intelligence, all these are measured through aptitude test.
Right.
So, it is one of the element of aptitude. Abilities are an element of
a
aptitude.
person can have different,
Different abilities in different areas.
Yeah, one can do many other things,
Many
but a
areas.
particular job required a particular specific
ability.
aptitude.
Yeah, that is the thing. So when we talk about aptitude, we are finding out a particular skill, whether it is there in you or not.
Right.
And this skill is ability. We are not denying the fact that ability is measured through aptitude tests. Okay.
Like-
And what else he was asking, like ability and
Aptitude and education.
education.
Through education,
Through
one can-
education, you can improve your skills.
Yes.
Through education, you are acquiring new abilities.
Application training will help
yeah,
to.
and that will
yeah.
increase your aptitude for a particular thing.
Yeah. We hope this was the question.
Although it was
yeah.
not that clear, but I think this was the question.
So we have another question, I hope. Okay. So the main thing is that people get confused about the attitude and aptitude.
But
So-
after this lecture, I think it is
that
clear.
is true. But how one can have a difference in three elements which differentiate? Yeah, to just sum up these things
Okay.
so that one can easily make the difference.
Okay. Now,
We have a question before we. Please ask your question.
What's provided aptitude or attitude?
Pardon?
in education system, sir.
Can you repeat your question, please? Could you repeat your question, please?
What's provided, aptitudes or attitudes? Hello, sir.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What's provided, aptitudes or attitudes in education system, sir?
It's not clear.
It's not clear. Could you repeat
Can
it?
you repeat the question, please? Hello? No, the question was not at all clear.
Yeah,
So we will summarize the whole lecture in few words, in the sense that aptitude is the talent, okay, and attitude. Attitude is the way you are.
We have another question. Yeah.
Okay.
Please ask your question. Please ask your question. I think we have got disconnected. So yeah, aptitude is a skill. One can-
Aptitude is the skill, it is the talent of a particular person, ability. All these terms can be used under aptitude. But when we talk about attitude, it is the way you are thinking, you are acting, your temperament,
Yeah. It is good.
your temperament.
Hello.
And
Yeah, we have another question.
Yeah.
So please ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah.
So please take the question, sir.
Pardon?
My question goes like this. What is the positive attitude? Is it influenced by social factors? If it is, then what should one do then to meet the demands of the society and to get satisfied?
Quality of attitude, aptitude, and how the societal factor, other cultural factor,
Now,
etc. that affects the attitude.
aptitude.
Aptitude and attitude both we will explain.
And attitude. Now, we have discussed that the family, there are certain group factors which has an impact on the formation of an attitude of a person, and attitude are learned, and they are learned throughout the life of an individual. Now, a person is interacting with different types of groups of people. His family, reference group, the social class to he
We
belongs.
can say agent of socialization like family,
They are the agents of the
peer
socialization.
group, schools, media, etc. Different sources that helps to build up the.
Now we can't. In fact, in that process, that person is when he is interacting with others, he is influenced by them as well as he is influencing them.
Influencing others.
But you cannot change these reference groups and social groups as such,
Okay.
isn't it? Can you change the attitude of the member of your family? It's very difficult. It will take time. So, but what I understood from the question is you are asking whether you can change the elements in this social group. It's a very difficult thing, and it's a long process. Now we can make changes in the sense that if the members of the reference group, their attitude changes, then it will have an influence on this person. One of the example is, suppose when you are going to a school or a college. Now the teachers teaching in that school, if they have a positive attitude, or if you have a different attitude from the members of his family, then he will learn that kind of attitude from that group. So in this way, the social factors can be changed, but it will be a long process.
Yeah, it takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah.
You can't all of a sudden change the attitude of the people in
Okay,
the
we'll take the last questions if you have. So we can see this way that social change, the individual change, that goes through the different phases, different stages.
and the person goes on acquiring. At one point of time, he may be have a very positive attitude for certain product, or a not negative attitude for a particular
Yeah.
object. But as the time changes, then he may develop a reverse kind of an attitude for that product or process. So
Right.
positive attitude may change to negative, negative attitude may change to positive, but it will take time.
Right.
So
and also some other changes come itself and some are
spontaneous.
induced
Some are
changes.
spontaneous, as we have discussed that organization can take up certain measures to change the attitude of the people.
Right.
It can inculcate different types of positive attitudes among the employees. And certain attitudes you can acquire on your own. You can change your own behavior. If you think that you want a positive attitude, you can do so. But it needs a determination.
Okay, I think that a number of queries are there. The students are keen to know about more about this. But today we will like to stop here, and I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and especially I appreciate EMRC Srinagar for participating in it, and I also thank other viewers. And on your behalf, I also thank Dr. Soma Sen Gupta for giving such a wonderful lecture. Thank you very much.